Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Translating Love. I'm Dani.
And I'm Woifi.
Hi, Woifi.
Hi, Dani. Today is an exciting day, but a little
Before we say why it's
before
exciting.
yeah, right. Just a little thank you to everyone who is still listening, who keeps listening, who keeps supporting us, keeps sharing, keeps liking the episodes or rating the podcast. We really appreciate it.
We do indeed.
I had an idea a couple of weeks ago about concerning an episode or a topic, and I asked some Instagram followers about that. Basically the question was if you have learned something by breaking up, or when someone broke up with you, or if it taught you something. And interestingly, Danielle, your dad, answered that he has some interesting insight.
Yeah.
And that's why he's on the podcast. And so
with that, we're very, very excited to welcome my dad to the podcast. Hello, Dad.
Hi.
Hello, you guys. How are you?
Good.
We're good. How are you?
Wonderful. It's a beautiful day. I'm just sitting here in the park and
Outside.
just enjoying a beautiful August day and
Nice.
getting to talk to you guys. So it's a great day.
We're sitting in the cold basement. So, yeah, it's pretty much the opposite.
Yep. So we're talking to my dad. He's all the way in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or I guess you're in Brookfield, technically.
Mm-hmm.
Well, West Dallas today.
West
but
Dallas.
yeah, you get the idea.
So yeah, he's where I grew up, and I'm all the way over here.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's exciting that you're here with us today. But maybe when I sent you, because I don't know how we talked, or if you answered the question by I don't know if I can answer that in such a short way. And then we talked a little bit about it, and I had the idea, did you just record your answer? But then Danielle and you talked and figured out that it would be the best for you to just be on it and talk about the whole thing.
Yeah, I think I answered your Instagram post and jokingly said that I could probably write a book on this topic, but so it kind of went from there. And and Danielle suggested that we just do it this way. I think it's a great idea.
I think so too. I had the idea, I don't know where it came from. I think I thought about the breakups I had in my life and what they taught me, or what I learned about myself after going through those. And I was like, okay, that could be an interesting topic. Mm-hmm. Since we already talked a little bit about exes. And of course, I mean, we are young, and someone who is, I wouldn't say old, but someone who is a little mature has more insight in that topic, I think. So yeah, it's really cool that you're on.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So, despite that you're calling me old right now,
Why not?
I think it's good. I think, everybody can relate to this, and just because, I have some years under my belt, so to speak, I don't think my experience is any different than anybody else's that have gone, because everybody's gone through something like this at one point, several times probably. So yeah, and I'm excited to kind of share what I've learned and continue to learn through all of it. But I think it'll be a helpful thing for people, because it's a pretty big topic, I think, and I think it's something that everybody has to everybody has experience with it, so it's good. So this will be good to talk about.
Maybe let's dive into it and talk a little bit about your history like how many breakups and how they went, and then let's dive more
Or like
detailed.
which ones were more significant
Right,
and
and
why they were
why.
more
Yeah,
significant
yeah.
and things like that.
How long is this podcast? You got like 3 hours or what?
Sure. We'll cut it down to like a crisp.
I was born a lonely child. No, we won't go there. But, no, I mean, just like everybody else, my first experiences with being in a relationship was in high school, like most of us. I think mine came a little later because I was always the guy who I always felt like the odd man out growing up, and I can distinctly remember in high school just watching couples in the hallway holding hands and thinking how great that would be, and that there was something missing in my life because I didn't have that. And I think that thought always recurs in my mind when I think about I've been thinking about this topic. Because I think it's important foundationally to how you deal with the other side of it after you lose something that you have. So I guess I was probably a junior in high school before I had a first date, so to speak. And that's a typical high school relationship. It was stupid and ridiculous and full of drama and the typical things that go with being 15, 16, 17 years old. And it didn't last long, and when it ends, it feels like the end of your world, right? Because the percentage of your life at 16 is, 6 months is a long time. So, and I think sometimes too, to step back, I think it depends on who breaks up with whom. If you're the one breaking versus the one being broken up with, I think your experience is a little bit different.
But I also think it's interesting how that changes as you get older, because I think that's always the case where when you're the one who's broken up with, I think it affects you a little harder. But I think as you get older and as the relationships get more meaningful, it might be equally as hard to be the one to break up with somebody as it is to be the one broken up with.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think for me, I think we have to even go back a little farther to when I was probably in third or fourth grade, because I had this is something that I think is foundational to my history with this. When I was a 10-year-old kid, I had a somewhat of an epiphany or a revelation that my life was going to be one marked by solitude, and it wasn't going to be the typical stereotypical life of an American person or just of any person, meaning that it wasn't going to be following this prescribed order of life. You get out of school, you go to college, you get married, you have kids, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. It was a very distinct moment in time when I realized that that's not what I wanted. I rejected it. And so that's really the foundation that really set the foundation for my personality. And it also set the foundation for the struggles that I would have as time went on. Because, you're 10 years old. How much of that do you really understand?
Right.
But it's interesting that you had like that big of an idea of what your life is going to be or should be at this age.
Yeah, and it just came to me as I was. It's a funny story. I was ordered to go into the backyard by my dad to go pull dandelion weeds out of the yard. And I was sitting back there. I had a little transistor radio with me, and I was sitting out there pulling weeds. And the realization hit me: why am I doing this? I just pulled up this damn weed last week, and here I am pulling it out again. And I was just angry. And then I just kind of looked up, and I saw the yard on my left and the yard on my right, and they were pristine. They were perfectly green yards with no weeds, no dandelions. And that's when it hit me that, this is why I'm pulling it. This is why I'm doing this right now, because my dad wants to be like everybody else. He wants to be like the neighbor here and the neighbor here, and he doesn't want to be different. And at that point, you know, as a 10-year-old kid, again, it just hit me that, no, I'm not doing it. And I stopped. And very, very funny, on the radio at that time, this was 1973, I think, Live and Let Die came on the radio. And it was just perfect. And I mean, to this day, when I hear that song, I think of that moment. And it's
interesting.
It is really an important, it's probably one of the most important moments in my life now that I look back on it. Mm-hmm. And it's really helped me in recent years to deal with the breakups, the big breakups in the 2 marriages that I've had. It's helped me to get through those and to learn something from those. So that's really the context of you know, anything I have to share with what I've learned. But, you know, and then you go through, went into college, and that was really the first time I had a really serious relationship with another person who I fell in love with. And you know, it gets a little bit more serious when you're away from home. You get to, you know, excuse me, Danielle, I'm your dad, but I got to talk about it. You end up, you do things, you know, that you just do at that age because you have the freedom to do it.
What things are you talking about?
You know those things.
Frolicking over lawns.
Oh, okay.
You know, holding hands and, you know.
Kisses on the cheek, that kind of stuff, sure.
Eskimo kisses.
Eskimo kisses. Things like staying out till 10 o'clock.
Ooh.
You know, things like, you know. But that was a really serious relationship. And I'm 18 at this point. And I thought I had met the person that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with at 18 years old. You know, again, looking back, it's a ridiculous idea, but at the time, it's everything, right? You just think that's the way it's going to be.
But it's not as ridiculous if you think about it. I mean, there are a lot of couples who meet around the time and they stay together, and some are still together, which it's a miracle in my perspective, but it happens.
Yeah, I think I do. I think I have people I went to high school with who are high school sweethearts who are still together, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
But this girl was it, you know. And Danielle, you know me very well. That, you know, I'm a pretty sappy guy, and when I'm a very romantically inclined guy, and so this is it for me. And I fell very, very hard for this girl, and things got a little bit too heavy too soon. And I proposed to this girl.
Oh, wow.
Really?
I don't think you even knew that, Danielle.
I feel like maybe you told me that at some point, but yeah.
And she said yes. And she's 19, I'm 18, and here we are. You know, we were keeping it a secret, which that's a problem of itself. You can't share it. And, that should be a sign right there that you're probably not ready. But again, we didn't know that. But then events happen, and not to get, you know, too involved. it got way too heavy, way too fast. And it just ended up where she looked at me one day and said, I can't marry you. We can't do this. And it was like a bomb went off. And I remember very vividly that and this became a very typical reaction for me, that it put me into a tailspin, a very serious tailspin where, I contemplated suicide. And if not for a phone call, I was in my dorm room alone one evening as this was all exploding. Nobody was on this dorm room floor in this dorm building for the weekend. Everybody had gone home, and I was all by myself, which was not a good place to be. And the phone rang in my room, and my phone never rang, and nobody called. And it was one of my brothers who called and just said, I was just thinking about you, and wanted to say hi and see how you were doing. And it was just out of the blue that he called. So I thought. I came to learn later on that she was worried about me, and she had called him.
Oh, okay.
And then he called me. We're good friends today, by the way. We kind of reconnected, and she and I are really good friends to this day.
That's
and
nice.
We met up about 3 years ago, and we had a really neat talk, and we both said, if we would have gotten married back in 1980, it would have been a disaster. That's what I had learned. I had learned that over the course of time. I saw that, wow, it would have been a complete disaster if we had done that. And she agreed. And so again, it's the value of time. And like you said, Wolfgang, the age thing, as you get older, you kind of see things a little differently.
But it's interesting. I can totally relate to that story. Kind of like I got dumped in my first relationship, and I remember for weeks I was depressed, and it was like the worst. As you said, it was like a bomb went off.
Well, and didn't you tell me that she broke up with you through somebody else?
Yeah,
she didn't do it herself.
yeah. So that was even worse.
Yeah.
It was like basically from one day to the other, I there was no contact, nothing. And so I can totally relate to that thing. Yeah.
Me too. Dad, you probably remember my first real breakup was.
I remember all of them, Danielle.
The first one that really hit me hard was when I was a sophomore. I don't want to say his name, but when I was a sophomore in high school, and I was staying at your place when he called and broke up with me. And you must have heard me in my room crying because you came in, and I'm sitting on the floor just bawling and completely heartbroken because he didn't even really say why. He just was kind of like, I don't really want to anymore. And that was the first, I think he and I were together for 6 months or something. And so that was the first long in quotes relationship that I had, but you kind of pulled me out of that one. And I remember I had to go, there was some sort of group trip that I was going on the next day to Six Flags. And I was just I don't want to go. It's an amusement park.
Yeah.
I was just I don't want to go. I can't even think straight right now. I don't want to get out of bed. And you pushed me. You said, you're going to go, you're going to have a great time, and you're not going to think about that boy who broke your heart. And I don't know, something about that. I remember that whole moment so vividly, even though the relationship itself I don't remember as much, but I think it's the breakup moments you don't forget those. And you don't forget like the moments around them and what happened after.
And I think it's when you start recalling those things is when that's when the lessons come to you.
Yeah.
You know? And that's time again.
Yeah.
You know, and I think for me, you know, my immediate response to breakups has always been doing something drastic. Almost to the extreme. Like in that case, with this girl in college, I left college. I shouldn't have been there anyway. I had no place being there. And on a whim, I walked down to the summer vacation. It was early, just after the school year was out. So this maybe was 2 weeks after the fact. Woke up one morning, went down to the military recruiting office before it opened, and told myself, the first dude that shows up here in the morning, that's I'm going to join the Army, I'm going to join the Navy, the Marines, or the Air Force, whichever guy shows up first.
Interesting.
And I remember vividly, this big Marine shows up first, and he sees me sitting there. I'm the only one there. And he says, son, you want to join the Marines? And I looked at him and I said, nope. And I waited for the next guy to come, and the Navy guy came next. And so I joined the Navy that very day. And 2 weeks later, I was, I was in San Diego in boot camp.
Wow.
And drastic, and still reeling. I mean, I was miserable. And that whole 13 weeks in boot camp, I was constantly reminded of this breakup, because every night, mail came and it was handed out to everybody. And I never got mail. I swear to God, I never got one piece of mail. And I was dying for a piece of mail from this girl, and it never came. And so, I mean, it's just it was a painful thing, and it's and I think we kind of see ourselves in moments like that, where we're the only ones in the world that have ever gone through something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. When you look back to that time, and specifically those few weeks after the breakup, if you could tell your younger self something, what would it be, or what are there some words or some encouragement that you would tell yourself?
Probably just put your pants on, boy, and just get over it. Just like you, Danielle. No, you're going to the amusement park.
Yeah, you're going to have fun, damn it.
That just get over it. Grow up a little bit, and it's not. You're 18 years old. This is not the end of your life.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest thing when you're younger, going through breakups, because you really feel like it's the end. You're like, your life's over. It just really feels like everything is crashing down on you, and you don't really have the ability to see all of the other good things and all of the life that you have ahead of you, but you're so focused on this one huge heartbreak.
Yeah, I think we tend to be that way anyway. As people, we're very myopic. We just we don't see more than 6 inches in front of our face. And for me, and at this point, I'm not recalling that 10-year-old kid. I mean, that doesn't come into play for years and years and years. But for me, the pattern was established. You do something drastic, you jump into something else. And from that point on, I started looking for relationships. I believed, again, not thinking about it, but as I think about it now, the prescription of life. You have to have somebody. You have to get married. You have to have kids. And I think as kids, that's ingrained in our heads by everything. Movies, television advertisements, everything just pounds that into our beings, that that's the way we're supposed to live.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt very uncomfortable not having that. And so I was looking for it. And so when you're looking for it, you tend to jump into situations that you're not ready to jump into.
Yeah.
And that became a pattern for me. I went from boot camp, and that's how I got to Washington, D.C., Danielle. I mean, we were we were given three choices of duty station in boot camp. And of course, everybody picks Hawaii as number one, and nobody gets to go. So I said, I'm not going to pick that because I know I'm not going to get it. So what's my first one? Oh, let's go to Washington, D.C. Why? Well, there's a hockey team there that I like, and I can go to the hockey game. So that's how I got to Washington, D.C. And when I got there, almost immediately found myself in a relationship with, I was a hospital corpsman, with a nurse who was, Danielle, you don't even know about this person, I don't think.
I don't.
She was married. First of all, it was
Ooh.
an enlisted person and an officer was a no. That's big. But she was a nurse on the floor that I worked on in the hospital, going through a divorce. And so she's still married though. And she's 25 years old. I'm 18, going on 19. And, we get into this relationship together. And here's your dad again, Danielle, saying, oh, this is the girl I'm going to spend the rest of my life with.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that lasted about 6 months.
Uh-huh.
And when that relationship ended, it ended because she started seeing my roommate at the time. So not only did that, end a relationship with her, it destroyed my friendship with this guy that I really liked. I mean, we were really good buddies up until that point.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it depends on how you are broken up with.
Yep.
I found out about this. I called her one night, and guess who answers the phone?
Oh no.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So
that's how you found out?
Yeah.
That's awful.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And we'll play a game show here. How did Joe react to that?
I would guess not well.
You joined the army.
You called that Marine officer and was like, you know what?
Yeah,
I will join.
No, I went into a tailspin again, same kind of thing. And this is my personality, I guess. And became very self-destructive because you think, okay, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And that's a recurring thought. I think that most people have, right? When they are broken up with, something must be wrong with me.
Yeah.
And it became so deeply ingrained that that's the pattern that developed with me. Every relationship after that, and there weren't many. I mean, so that's the second one. And then I met your mom. I met your mom actually during that time.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because I knew you met her while you were working at the hospital.
Yeah. I met your mom.
Just for our listeners who don't know, my mom was in a motorcycle accident and she lost her leg. And she was 18. And the hospital that she went to after her accident was where my dad was working. And that's how they met.
Yeah. And she knows this. She used to joke because I was still seeing this woman. She wasn't a girl. She was a woman. When your mom was in the hospital, we were, your mom and I weren't dating yet. She was in the hospital. We were just friends. I had just met her. And that's a great story in and of itself. And
it is.
I met her on a direct order. I was ordered to go into her room the day she got there to wash her hair. And that's how I met her.
The day she got there.
The day she got there,
Woof.
yeah, I was ordered to go in there and wash her room, and she was all geeked out on all kinds of,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really funny. Actually, she was telling some funny stories, but I was, I went in there and I washed her hair. That's how we met, and so over the course of, she was in the hospital for it was September, so October, November, December, January, February, through February.
Mm-hmm.
She was there, and we became really, really good friends as she was in the hospital. And our first date, she was still in the hospital. She was being released. She was able to get out every now and then, and we had our first date. And again, right away, like within hours of that first date, I'm saying to myself, this is the girl I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. And the story from there, Danny. We were together for 23, well, more than that. We were married for 23 years, but we were dating. We didn't get married for the first 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, I knew her a long time, relatively speaking, before we got married. And then, we were married for 23 years. And that's a long story. And I don't think we need to go into that story. But
No.
Again, the breakup part of it, same pattern again. Ended up in a very self-destructive mode, and needing to feeling like I need to jump into something else because I can't be alone. I can't. Yeah. I have to have somebody. I can't spend the rest of my life alone. At the time, I was teaching middle school, and there was another teacher at the school. This was not even 2 full years after my split up with your mom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember, because I don't think you brought her to come meet us for a while. I think it was still, you waited a good amount of time after you had been seeing her. But I remember I was a cold bitch the first time I met her because I was so not ready for it. And not that that's your fault, but I was at that age where I was maybe 15, I guess, 14 or 15, and you're just kind of at that age where you're like, I don't want to accept another person into my life. And I don't think I was mean, but I don't think I was friendly either.
Looking back, if you look back, like to the times in between your relationships, do you think it was the right amount of time, or was it too little time that you gave yourself to basically move on to something new?
Yeah, in hindsight, again, going back, this is what you learn, right?
Yeah.
In hindsight, no way, not even close to enough time. Wasn't ready. At the time, yeah, the perfect amount of time. I'm ready. Again, the old cliches. You fall off the horse, you brush yourself off, you get right back on it, right? Yeah. So at the time, though there was some trepidation towards it, I convinced myself that I had enough time, that I was ready, but I wasn't even close. And that became evident very quickly. It was evident the day we got married. I knew standing there that it was a mistake. I knew it. It's kind of like, okay, you guys are movie people. Jerry Maguire.
Oh yeah.
And remember the scene when after he gets married, they're kind of watching the videotape of it.
Yep.
She's behind and she's watching, and the camera catches him kind of rubbing his face and grimacing a little bit, bite down on his teeth. I actually did that. that day.
Dad, I relate to that so much. That's how I felt the day, not marrying Woifi. I don't want that to be the wrong impression. That's the wrong impression. No, but my first marriage, that still sounds weird to me, but my first marriage, I remember at the rehearsal when you and I walked down the aisle, and because that's a thing in the US that you rehearse your wedding the night before. But I remember when you and I walked down the aisle together, I started crying. And I don't know how you interpreted that. I never asked you that. But when I thought about it later, I thought it was, oh, there's just a lot of emotion. I'm excited. This is going to be so beautiful. But I was terrified. After we left the rehearsal dinner, I was thinking about it. I'm like, why did I cry? And I was terrified. I was like, I don't know if this is right. I don't know if this is what I should be doing. But at that point, it was too late. At least I felt it was. And I felt the same. When I stood there on my wedding day, I was happy because it was a beautiful day. There was all of our friends and family there. And I loved this person. But I knew that it wasn't going to last. I knew it was the wrong choice to get married at the time that we did. And it's one of those things, it's also, you learn about it later, where it's like, you saw all the red flags. I saw all of them, but I ignored them because I loved the person. And even knowing it wasn't going to last, or that it couldn't last, you ignore all of that stuff until it gets to the point where you literally can't anymore.
Yeah, no, that's true. And it makes me wonder how often that happens, especially with younger people who get married, and because what have you experienced in life to really, because you never know, even if you're 90 years old and you're getting married, you never really know. And don't get me wrong, I loved her very much, but I knew that it wasn't, this wasn't going to work. But what am I going to do? That time you're stuck. So am I going to be the asshole who just kind of says, no, forget it right here in the heat of the moment, which in hindsight, I should have done. It would have been terrible, but in the long run, it probably would have been better for everybody.
Yeah.
Well, I will say that, I think a lot of good things came out of that relationship, and this is maybe selfish, but also for me, because she had 2 kids and they were younger, and her daughter and I still refer to her as my sister. We talk all the time, and she and I are super, super close. So that's something that it would have been sad to not have that relationship with her, I think.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's taking off your nearsightedness glasses and putting some time and perspective to a bad situation, which I think is not something we are inclined to do in the heat of the emotion of moments like that.
Yeah.
Right. But in the end, I feel the same way, going back, with the advantage of time, as painful as that was. And again, pattern once again sent me into a tailspin. You know the story, Danielle, and it took a while, but it eventually led to that place, like you said, where you can see, just like it did with your mom over the course of time, it led to a perspective that, hey, it's a good thing. It worked out. It was better for both of us, better for her, for me, and in your mom's case, it was better for us as a couple, as friends. We're better friends today than we ever were.
Yeah. Well, and also from mine and Zach's perspective, obviously at first we went through the stage of, I don't think Zach and I never had a feeling that we were on one person's side more than the other. We loved you both equally. We didn't blame either of you. I think maybe I blamed mom a little bit more than I blamed you, but for the most part, it was just how it was. But over time, Zach and I also realized that we were grateful, which sounds so weird, but we were grateful that you guys decided not to stay together, because had you stayed together and were just miserable, like if you just stayed together for us and you were miserable, that would have been miserable for everybody. And then you guys also wouldn't have found your happiness elsewhere. And sometimes that's just how it needs to be, that it's better to save the relationship as friends than to ruin the relationship and ruin the relationship of the entire family if you stay together.
And also make your life and the other life miserable, right? I mean...
Right, and that's another part of the equation, I think, in breakups. I think there's context that, as a high schooler, there are two people affected with a breakup, right? As you get older, it gets more complicated. There are more people that may be on the periphery of your relationship that have to deal with the consequences of a breakup. So it makes things and your experience of those things a little bit different. But like you said, it also has the converse effect that it helps you to kind of see some of those things that you have to be grateful for in the process of that. And that's, like, I agree with you, Danielle. That's, the peripheral things that were involved with my relationship with her were those two kids who I love to death to this day. It's an enriching part of your life that you would have missed out on if it were not for that relationship to begin with. So, as a 16-year-old, there's no way you think of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But even as a 55-year-old at the time, I didn't think of it that way either. But in the years since, I've gone back to that 10-year-old kid many, many times, thinking that the thing that I've learned most through all of these breakups really is the same lesson that I finally started to listen to after 50 years.
That's what I just wanted to ask you. How long did it take you after the last significant breakup to bounce back and also, I mean, I don't know you that long, that close, but you seem more content, you seem more happy with being alone. And I mean, sure, being alone is not always fun, but you seem like someone who has acknowledged the situation and who learned to love the situation,
or at least who is confident in that it's okay to not be in a relationship too, and it's not always something you have to search for.
Right. And how long did it take you to come to the place?
That was 2014, and it really didn't. It started to turn about a year after that. It was the spring of 2015, and there was more involved with that, because again, the pattern was tailspin, Joe, again, heavy drinking, just self-destruction. And it wasn't until early 2015 when the decision because of, thank you, Danielle, your encouragement for 30 days. I remember it was a 30-day challenge, right? To stop drinking for 30 days. And that 30 days turned into 3 years.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of the turnaround. And it was at that point that I started to really listen to the lessons that I had been awakened to in that backyard in 1973. And now I started to finally understand them. And that's, it took, I mean, I was 10. So that took 45 years to actually hear the lesson that was being given to me as a kid. And I started to hear it. In the course of that, I was faced with the situation again. Danielle, you know the story. Oh, I met the woman that not met, but was reunited with a person that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. And so it's a pattern that keeps going on and on, and that still may happen. That's still a situation that took time to kind of settle itself through and out, and some understanding between the two of us with respect to that. And that may or may not happen. It may, but it may not. And if it doesn't, I'm at the place now, because I love what I've learned, that I'm okay with that if it doesn't. And Tailspin Joe is no longer a person. He's gone because of what I've learned. And in a nutshell, I've learned that everything that we're taught about relationships from a child is wrong, and that we are not meant to be a Siamese twin with another person.
Right.
And relationships aren't supposed to be that, and they're painful in the breaks, because that's what we become. We become so attached to a person that we're told we have to be one person, and that's just not true. And as I looked back over the past, since the end of my second marriage, as I've looked back over the course of all of these relationships, especially my two marriages, part of the lesson is the purpose of a partner in a relationship is not to be connected to them as one person, but to defend their individuality. And the failure, I got to think back, the failure of the marriage between like me and your mom, Danielle, was not that we fell out of love with each other, but we didn't mature in our relationship at the same pace we matured age-wise, and we didn't learn that. I can't speak for Patty, but for me, I didn't learn that lesson. I didn't see a relationship that way.
Do you think because your pattern seems to basically run after something that is like being finding the person you spend the rest of your life with, and this almost like this cliche of being with someone, and that someone is the last person you being with, and you already said that that's true, like advertisement, movies, shows, whatever. It's like this thing that like this prestigious thing that basically like a happy family is someone who has like who are together until the rest of the days, and you have kids, and that's the goal. But do you think that like, I don't know how your family patterns are with your parents and your grandparents and stuff like that, but is that something that was like lived right in front of you, that you saw like, okay, this is how it should be, or is it like a religious thing almost, like because that's also something?
Yeah, because I've heard you guys talk about it before on different podcasts, and my parents' marriage for people of that generation was really functional. It was more, not to say that they didn't love each other. I can't speak for them. I think they were probably did have that kind of affection, but not the kind that you see in Hollywood,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I think marriage then that I saw growing up was function. It was, and there was a religious element to it. The function was to have babies, a very Catholic attitude towards relationship that goes back to, that man and woman shall become one flesh kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And the purpose was to procreate. And they did. There were 8 kids. But that too, over the course of time, helped me to think about and they were divorced. That relationship fell apart when I was about that same time, 10, 11 years old. It was falling apart.
That's interesting. I don't think I ever knew that they were divorced.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, my pops was he was a typical, born in the 1920s, went to fight in World War II, which, had to be the most profound experience he's in his 20s at the time, and like a lot of those guys came back from war, they never talked about it. Never. I never heard one word about it growing up. He never said anything about it. And so I think, those kinds of experiences, I can't speak for him, but, they ate him up. And this was, and the time in America that during the 50s, that was a time of great prosperity. And this whole concept of the American dream, talking about prescribed lives, you get married, you have kids, you build a career, you have a house, you buy a car, then you buy another car, then you buy a bigger house, and you work, and that's life. And so relationships during that time, they were a function of that kind of a life. And so individuality didn't really play into the equation very much, and it actually was the kryptonite to a successful relationship during that time if you were an individual. And so I witnessed that growing up. Didn't understand it as a kid as I saw that relationship sputter into nothing. But again, over the course of time, I can see it more clearly now because I've kind of lived through some of that, and I understand that that's just a lie. It's just a lie what we're told, and so my takeaway from all of it is, if I get into another relationship, which I'm not ruling out, I'm okay if that never happens again. But I see the foundation of any relationship as much different than what I did 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years, 10, 5 years ago. It's much different. And I think that the one person guarding the individuality of the other person is the foundation of that relationship. And as successful you are at that, then the congruent degree of success you will have in a relationship. And so I wish, now going back to your question earlier, what would you say to that 40-year-old guy in his first marriage? That's what I would say to him. You're looking at this thing completely wrong, and you have to readjust your perceptions and your ideas of what marriage and what relationships are supposed to be. But again, we don't look at things in the moment that way. We see things 6 inches in front of our face, if that far.
I mean, also, if you're married and if you are like thinking about breaking up and getting a divorce, that's also another level of because a breakup is a breakup, but getting divorced is another level of, okay, we are going to split. Besides, obviously, as you said, affecting other people, kids or family members or whatever in the whole thing. But the divorce part itself has like this stigma to it still, which
Yeah.
is so stupid because in the end, it's something that helps people to get happier, helps people to get back to a better life. And yeah, sometimes it has to be like that in order to be happy again. And in order to make a better life for kids, for example, or family members possible. So that alone is like a big thing. I think if you looking back to your two divorces, I think that's a big accomplishment that you got out at a point where you still were able to salvage happiness for you and your family and for your kids. And looking back now, I think that's a major accomplishment.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's probably more true, more so the case in Europe, especially in probably Austria and Germany, more where Catholicism is still so heavily ingrained in the psyche of culture, and it's not here anymore. I mean, it's still, you have pockets here and there, but you know, for my parents, yeah, it was then, and so the DNA of that relationship, you know, I took that on, and so a divorce for me was not seen, like you said, in a positive way. It's like kind of a reset of your life. It was seen as it's a failure. Again, what's wrong with me? What did I do wrong? I'm a screw up. You know, I can't do anything right. I can't even do this. But and I still think that that's prevalent because I went through that too. You know, but that is, I think, the perception that you have to get past that in the moment and see that it is a reset in your life. And it's good. And not that everybody ends up happy together, you know, as friends, because I know a lot of divorce because they hate each other's guts.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and they'll never speak to each other again, which is fine too. You know, that's part of it.
Yeah.
But you know, as hard as they are, and for me, as hard as they have been over the course of my life, I'm grateful for every single one of them, because now I look back and I see they've all contributed to the understanding and the person that I am today. And my ability to be able to really, if I fall in love again, well, Danielle, you know, I am in love again, but I understand what that means now, and I'm able to step back and say, you know, if this is good, then it's going to work. If it's not going to work, that's okay. That doesn't change me. I understand who I am, and that's really the ultimate goal in life, right? Is just to understand who you are as a person, be happy with that, and content with that, and live your life out from that. And that's what I've learned. And it's a recent thing for me. Like you said, it's only been 5 years really that I've been able to live out of those lessons, but it's really good. It's been really good.
I think something that, just going back to what you were saying about how when you get divorced, a lot of times people will think like, what did I do wrong? What's wrong with me? And I had a lot of that too. But I think another big thing that people face is asking themselves, what will people think? And for me, that was the biggest one. And I remember countless talks on the phone with you and with Mom about me feeling exactly like that. Like, what are people going to think? We've only been married for less than a year by the time we were talking about it. I was like, what are people going to think? For me, it was like they all came to our wedding less than a year ago. They gave us all these wonderful gifts. They did all of these lovely things for us. And now we're like, sorry, we're not together anymore. And to put on top of it, because at the same time, you and me and mom, we were all talking about that I was having feelings for this other person and for Woifi, and being very confused about those feelings because I wanted to feel them, but I felt guilty for feeling them. And because I wasn't looking for something, it was just something that happened. And so I had this, that was my biggest struggle, I think. And I think you and mom were such a huge help with that because you had both been through it before. And so you were able to, and mom had kind of a similar situation where she had feelings for somebody. And so I think just the combination of being able to talk to both of you really helped me, because that's something that I learned that was so needed in my life, because I had always been that kind of person where I cared way too much about what other people thought about every single thing that I did, and it was so destructive.
I think, Wifey, you've talked about that in episodes too, about, you know, like divorce and just the attitudes of like people's perception, people's judgment upon you, you know, and you know, and that's one of the things is you come to realize that doesn't matter really in the end. That people's perceptions are not your problems. They're not your problems. They're their problems.
And it's not your responsibility to explain to them everything that happened in your personal life that led to that moment that they don't understand. And for me, that was such a huge game changer for my entire, like, the next year of my life, where I was like, I learned to just stop caring. If people think that I purposefully looked for another relationship while I was in the middle of a divorce, fine, let them think that. I don't care. Because the most important thing is that you know what you want, you know what happened, and there is nothing else to it. It's just, that's how it is. And it's super empowering to learn to not really care what other people think about your life decisions.
Yeah.
It is. It's very empowering, and it's not only empowering for you personally, just as for your growth as an individual person, but I think it's empowering for any future relationship that you find yourself in after a breakup.
Yeah.
You know that you know the only person that you can control is yourself.
Yeah.
You can't control another person. And the only responses to things, to like a breakup, that you can control is your own. You can't do anything about anybody else. And it's really important. I mean, it's kind of a funny topic, you know, when people say, what did you learn in breakups? And my first reaction was, when I saw you guys doing that, I chuckled. I thought that's pretty funny. But when you really talk about it and think about it, it's funny. It can be comical, but it's really profound.
Yeah.
Because of the really the implications for just living a happy life, are involved. It's a really profound moment, or moments for most people, in life. And so it's just an encouragement to people who may be listening to this, who are going through it. Just give yourself time to step back and to see things more clearly. Time is a great giver of perspective. And it's not the end of the world, even though it seems like it. It's the opposite. It's the beginning of a new world.
Yeah. I think a good, because it's starting to get long and I don't want to make people listen to a podcast that's like an hour and a half long, but you said something that just made me think that maybe a really nice way to end this episode is by you saying the quote that you have tattooed on your arm.
Which
You know what I'm
which
talking
quote?
about?
I have 3 of them.
The one that you have written in Arabic.
Oh, okay. It's in Hebrew.
In Hebrew.
It's from the Talmud. It says, "We do not see things as they are. We see things as we are."
Yeah.
I think that's so fitting to what you just said.
I think so too. And you said, I mean, yeah, and that's for me too. I think that's what I learned from my breakups, that it's all about happiness and all about living a happy life, because that's what everyone wants.
Mm-hmm.
And if I break it down as simple as possible, I say, if you're not happy being with someone, then you can't make them happy. Therefore, they can't be happy.
Yeah.
Which basically means, okay, there has to be a change. There has to change something in order to make both of you happy again. And sometimes it's through divorce, breakup, hardship, sadness. But I think, as you said, in the end, you look back at those moments and you have this, I don't know, thankful and grateful perspective on them, and you learned, you grew through them, and you take away something from them for later situations.
Yeah, absolutely true. Yeah. Good stuff.
All right. Well, I think that with that, we will
conclude
the episode. But we are so very, very grateful that you took the time to come on and share your experiences and be so open about them.
Yeah.
And I think that your perspective is really helpful and relatable to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So
I hope so. And guess what? We didn't talk about poop once in the whole.
Oh no!
But now you said poop.
Yeah. You have to get it in once.
I thought there was something missing.
Oh, you know what's funny is that Woifi said, because I told him that growing up you were really uncomfortable with certain things, like if people were talking about sex or if people were talking about poop or things like that, it made you really uncomfortable. And so I was like, I don't know if he's still like that though. And Woifi was like, oh, I'm totally gonna make him uncomfortable.
I totally
when he
forgot
comes
about
on the
that.
Podcast.
I totally forgot about that.
There you go. I jumped the gun on you. Good.
You did.
Yeah. Thanks for everyone who kept listening, who kept listening through the episode. It's a long one, but I think it's a good one.
Me too.
If you liked what you hear, please consider following us or subscribing, and rate the podcast on Apple Podcast or Stitcher. And yeah, if you have suggestions, feedback, or want to just message us, everything is like in the description of the podcast.
And Dad, thank you again for being on, and I love you very much.
I love you too.
Guys, very much. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.